Morning, grade 7. Hope you're doing well. Today is the last formal lesson in this unit. We're going to have a test early next week, but we're going to jump into our last lesson and then we'll do a couple days of review so that you'll be ready for the test. So today we're going to talk about two-step algebraic equations. We have already done this back in Unit 5, but again, we're just adding the level of difficulty where we're working with fractions. So I'm going to start by reviewing multiplying equations and then we'll jump into the two-step equations. Okay, so I just wanted to go over this with you because I realized I forgot to review this in yesterday's lesson. So in yesterday's lesson, I talked about questions like this. We have negative 11/45 times x. I didn't realize that in what I had assigned you, it actually looked like something like this. What I want you to know is that these two things are exactly the same. So if you see negative 11x over 45, like over here, you can just rewrite that in your mind as the same thing as over here, negative 11/45 times x, okay? Another thing that I want to point out is the difference between these ones over here. Here I have negative 3/14, and here I have negative 3/14. I end up with the same answer. Same with over here, my negative is now on the bottom. So all four of these equations that I have written out are exactly the same. So it'd be good for you to familiarize yourself with looking at them and seeing how they are all equivalent fractions. Okay, so now we're going to get into two-step equations. So the important thing to remember with two-step equations is that we're really working backwards in a sense. So we're going to do the opposite of BEDMAS to solve this. So if you want, you can just remember that we're going to work with the addition and the subtraction first. We're going to get rid of that in order to get m by itself before we do multiplication and division, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I still want to get m by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to get rid of that subtract 4. So I have 2/3 m, or I can think of 2m over 3, minus 4. And now I'm going to do the opposite of minus 4. The opposite of minus 4 is plus 4. But of course, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So now I have these guys over here cancel out. So I get 2m, or 2/3 m, however you want to think of it, equals, and because I have an improper or two mixed numbers, I can just add them together, equals 7 and 1/5. Now in order to get rid of m being multiplied by 2/3, I can divide by 2/3. So I can do that over here. I can divide by 2/3 on this side. And then remember from the lesson yesterday, I prefer to write divide by 2/3 this way over here. These guys then cancel out. I'm going to erase that just to give myself a little bit more room to work with things. So I end up with really m equals 7 and 1/5 divided by 2/3. Now let's do two steps on the next line. The first thing I need to do is I need to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. So I do 7 times 5 is 35, and then I add 1. So I get 36/5. And then, like I said, I was going to do two steps. When I divide, I actually multiply by the reciprocal. So I multiply by 3/2. When I'm working with multiplying fractions, I can just multiply the top and the bottom. But if I want to make my life a little bit easier, I can cross cancel. So I can divide by 2 and I get 1. And I can divide by 36. I'm going to divide that by 2 and I get 18. So then I get 5 times 1 on the bottom is 5. 18 times 3. Don't be afraid to go ahead and do it on the side. 18 times 3. And I get 54. So I get 54/5, which I can, of course, simplify into 10 and 4/5 left over. Okay, so really we've added one extra little step from yesterday where we have to start by getting rid of our minus 4 with a plus 4. All right, let's do another example. Okay, so again, here we have negative 4m over 5 plus 6 equals 12. So the first thing we're going to do, working the opposite of BEDMAS, is get rid of this plus 6. So make sure when you're doing your work in your textbook that you write out all the steps Because remember, big part of grade 7 math is knowing the steps and how to show them as opposed to just finding the answer. So my new thing that I did, of course, was to subtract 6. So I'm going to subtract 6 on this side as well. Make sure your new things match up. So now I get 4m over 5, which if I want, I might want to write it as negative 4/5 m, equals 12 take away 6 is 6. Same thing as before. Right now, m is being multiplied by negative 4/5. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I divide by negative 4/5 and I divide by negative 4/5. Make sure that negative comes with you. Okay, once again, I'm going to erase just to give myself a little bit more room to work with things on the screen. So we get now m is all by itself, which we want, is 6 divided by negative 4/5. So my 6, I can write as a fraction, 6 over 1. I'm now going to multiply by the reciprocal. So make sure when you change to multiplication that you also change to the reciprocal. So multiply the top, multiply the bottom. If I want, I can cross cancel. I can divide both of these by 2. So I get 3 and I get 2. 3 times 5 is 15 and I get 15 over 2. How many times does 2 fit into 15? Well, it fits in 7 times with 1 left over. So I get 7.5 as my answer. All right, we'll do one more example, working with adding fractions into this part over here. So our steps are not changing. So I have negative 1/2 m minus 3 2/3. Do the opposite. Add 3 2/3. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So my new thing is adding 3 2/3. So I do that to that side. So now I get negative 1/2 m equals 13 2/3. Same thing as before. Let's divide by negative 1/2. It's the opposite of multiplying. So I do the same thing to this side. Divide by negative 1/2. Make sure the negative comes with you. Same thing as before. I'm going to erase to give myself a little bit more room. And I get m equals 13 2/3 divided by negative 1/2. Let's combine some steps. So now I need to think to myself 3 times 13. I'm working over here. 3 times 13. Well, I know 3 times 10 is 30 and 3 times 3 is 9. So I get 39 and then I add 2 more. So I get 41 over 3. And then I multiply by the reciprocal. So I get 2 over 1. Can't do any cross canceling, but that's okay. The numbers aren't too difficult to work with. So I get 41 times 2 is 82 thirds. Now I need to think to myself, how many times does 3 fit into 82? So number on top goes in the box. 3 fits into 8 twice, 6, and then I get 2. Bring it down. 3 fits into 22 7 times, 21, 1. So I get 27. And now notice over here, 1 is my remainder. I don't put a decimal down like I do sometimes. I just know that that 1 is my leftover piece. And what kind of piece was it? Well, it was a third. Okay, so I get 21 1/3. Now I noticed as I made my videos the last few days, my iPad has been doing some weird things where it's not quite in sync with my voice as to what I'm drawing. I'm looking for a way to fix that. It gets, I think, more out of sync the further I get in the video. So sometimes I get cut off at the end of the video, or it might be that what I'm drawing is ahead of what I'm saying. So hopefully you can still figure it out. Feel free to give me a call if you have any questions. On Thursday, we'll do more review, and then we'll do some review on Monday, and then we'll do an online test. If you get stuck when you're doing the quiz and you're like, oh, I have no idea how to find the right answer, give me a call during the quiz. I can help you with it because I want the quiz to be part of your learning process. So if you get to a question, you're like, I don't know how to do it, please ask me for help and I can walk you through the steps to help you get ready for your test. All right, talk to you later.